This is the brand new WORKER Harrier blaster. It's a third-party Nerf blaster that shoots cut-down Nerf darts, or half darts. And it is, without a doubt, probably the best blaster you could put your money on right now. But first, what's for dinner?
You might be able to mod a blaster, but can you cook a meal? Well, thanks to today's sponsor, HelloFresh, you can power level your cooking skill to 99 in no time. Skip the grocery store and grand exchange, HelloFresh delivers farm fresh ingredients straight to your doorstep along with handcrafted recipes that you can curate to your diet and tastes. Takeout is only getting more expensive, but no lie, I've cooked things with HelloFresh that taste better for a fraction of the cost. If you can't cook, but you can build a Lego set, every meal comes with a step-by-step instruction card with pictures, so you'll be even better than mama in no time. And with over 40 different weekly recipes and countless more rotating every month and season with choices for every diet and palate, on top of customizable meals with a variety of sides and add-on options, you'll never run out of deliciousness. My favorite part of HelloFresh is the ability to cook things that I'd never cook normally. It's so easy to fall into the lull of the same dozen or so comfort meals, but stuff like brown sugar bourbon pork chops, chicken sausage and lemony herb risotto, sweet chili beef bowls.
Now we're talking.
I don't even have to think about grabbing all the ingredients. I just rip open a bag and put on some music. You're probably pretty hungry now, so make sure you go to HelloFresh.com and use the code Walcom65 for 65% off plus free shipping. Thanks again to HelloFresh for sponsoring this video.
Okay, well, to be fair, this one is like a completely customized version, so we're gonna have to put it to its stock configuration. Do a little bit of this, get rid of you. That's a little bit better. Out goes the long boy, in goes the short boy. While I question the use of a bipod on a Nerf foam dart blaster in general, this one's gotta go. Get rid of this. Yeah, I know, it's cold in here. And the cherry on top? This is the WORKER Harrier in its stock form. Yeah, so a couple of things right off the bat. This was sent to me by Out of Darts, and this was his personal Harrier blaster, which he had already fielded in a war. And because of that, I don't have the original packaging. What I do have instead is a bunch of aftermarket parts for the WORKER Harrier. This is sort of the evolution of the WORKER Swift. However, this is not a direct upgrade from the Swift. It's more of a side grade. And we'll talk about some key differences between them towards the end. Out of the box, you get two priming options. You get a Picatinny mounted vertical foregrip and a Picatinny mountable bolt action prime. It's a direct pullback. It's not a true bolt action, but it works surprisingly well with the Harrier here. It also includes two barrel options, a short boy and a not so short boy, and two springs in similar designations. Every rail that you see on this blaster is aluminum, starting with the entire top full-length Picatinny rail, where you can mount all of the optics ever. I should note that this is an optional piece. You do not have to use it. In fact, if you want to just use the WORKER Harrier, it does have a flat-bladed rear sight that is the same color as the rest of the blaster, so it's practically invisible, and a little front notch, which again is the same color as the rest of the blaster. You've also got two side-mounted identical Picatinny rails for things like your flashlights, your cameras, or your tactical snack holders. Even at the very front of the blaster, there's a tiny Picatinny rail right here for similar accessories, including a bipod. And the part that your grip mounts to is also Picatinny. Magwell is located right here. The mag release is this piece right there, which is very comfortable, I might add, and it comes with its own unique 5-round magazine. Of course, this uses Talon magazine, so it's compatible with any Talon magazine. Moving slightly farther back, you've got the grip, which has this rubber piece right here, which makes it super comfortable to hold. You've got a metal aluminum trigger. You've got a safety, which blocks the trigger from being pressed when it's engaged. And the first contentious point is this piece right here, which is an aluminum grip guard, something I'm a huge fan of. However, couple of problems. One, added weight. It does act as a counterbalance, and I think that's why it was included, but it is entirely optional to remove. Without any piece on the bottom here to kind of fill in the gap, it looks a little ugly, but it's not that bad. But more importantly, it does make it kind of a problem to easily reach forward and manipulate the mag release, which, to be fair, might already just be a problem in general because my tiny hands can barely, it's not comfortable to use like that. The mag release is a little too far forward for me. But of course, that does not affect a two-handed reload whatsoever. And to be super fair, I don't know if this thing will ever do a one-handed mag drop. The mag tends to get kind of caught in there. Moving even farther back, you've got the stock. This is WORKER's own original design, and it is a super cool thing. It's got this big clip, like a carabiner on the back of it, which is awesome because this will technically work for a sling or anything like it, but that is how you adjust the stock, and it's a multi-positional stock because it is in fact an M4 style buffer tube, which means any M4 style buffer tube stocks you may have will work with this blaster. And super important thing to add, there's an Allen key located at the rear of your buffer tube stock. This key will undo every single screw on this blaster. All of them. Every single one. This is key to the function of the Worker Harrier because out of the box, it's actually broken into two halves. These two screws right here actually bolt the front half of the blaster to the rear. However, with the Picatinny rail installed at the top, there are an additional two screws you would have to remove in order to completely disassemble the front piece. That is a requirement for swapping out the spring on this blaster. It is technically a maximum of 4 screws, and of course, swapping out the spring allows you to change the power of the blaster. That's one of the reasons people buy platforms like this, is because you can tune this thing up and down. Different wars have different FPS caps for a variety of reasons, so having a blaster that can hit pretty much all of those is extremely important and well worth the investment. However, a spring swap is not the only way you can change the power of a blaster. The length of the barrel has a lot to do with that as well, and one of the huge upgrades of the Worker Harrier over a lot of its contemporaries is the fact that the barrels are actually all threaded, and you can easily, at any time with no tool, unscrew one of the barrels and completely swap it out for a different one, or you could just remove the barrel for transport or storage. And last but certainly not least, there is a plastic Worker scar muzzle included. Make sure you're subscribed because I have it under good authority. You probably aren't. The Harrier has one thing going for it out of the box, and that this thing is just maximum build quality. The Harrier itself is one of the nicest blasters you can get your hands on. The plastic on the Harrier is freaking fantastic, and most importantly, it is incredibly thick and rigid, which means when you're priming this thing back, especially with a hefty spring, you're not exerting any extra force that is lost because the blaster plastic itself is flexing. No. This thing is rock solid, and at its price range, there is nothing that even remotely competes with it. Yes, this thing is far nicer feeling than the Worker Swift could ever dream. I actually took off every single one of these rails on here, and I weighed them, and you will save about ½ a pound if you remove those pieces, which is a substantial weight on this blaster, especially with most of this being front end heavy. Everything comes apart, and there is quite a bit to talk about here as well. Starting off, entire breech system, aluminum. There's no plastic here. This should technically last forever, and I really hope it does, because one of the first problems you had with the Worker Swift is that the breech that held your barrel in place broke, and they had to make a metal one. This one, it's metal right out of the box. And here's one of the biggest, baddest upgrades over the Swift. The thing that makes the Swift not even compare to this, in my opinion, it's that the actual priming linkage mechanism itself has an upgrade piece that costs about $15 that adds bearings and rollers to your priming linkage, which completely changes the game because it vastly lessens the amount of power you need to prime this thing and makes it far more enjoyable to use. There are two small issues. One, it will wear down the finish on your barrel, which doesn't matter because your barrel's inside your blaster, nobody's gonna see it. And two, it does come with both ball bearings and some nylon wheels. The nylon wheels work just as good as the ball bearings from what I could see. The ball bearings have a slightly louder noise, and they wear significantly more on the barrel, but you get both when you buy the part, and it's really easy to swap them out, so just use the nylon wheels. And then, you don't have to manipulate the trigger or anything. We can pull out the plunger head, plunger rod, and the spring assembly. Note, the plunger rod and head is not metal. It is actually Delrin, machined Delrin. Very nice. Some of you may be crying foul because it's not a metal piece. How dare they? The Swift came with a metal one. One of the more popular upgrades for the Swift was actually replacing the metal plunger head and rod with a Delrin or some kind of equivalent that is also equally as strong and much lighter. Yeah, because the entire power of your blaster relies on this thing not only moving fast, but also sealing and compressing air so it goes out the barrel and drives your dart forward. And this also means the catch in the back of the blaster is also Delrin, which is good. If it was aluminum, well, aluminum on aluminum would just cause the aluminum to scrape and wear down. And Delrin on aluminum, well, it would cause the Delrin to chip and probably break at some point. Delrin on Delrin, well, that's perfectly fine, and it should be able to take pretty much anything you throw at. The plunger tube itself is smaller than what you get with the Worker Swift. That's why this thing is more of a side grade. This will not hit the absolute maximum numbers that the Swift can do. Now I am gonna cop out a little bit here for two reasons. One, there's a lot of spring and barrel combo to take a look at here, and that's a lot of effort that I've already done and didn't really have good results on because I don't know why, but for some reason, this thing is causing issues with my chronograph. I tested other blasters and they seemed really consistent, but my shots with the Harrier seem very inconsistent, especially compared to the data I've already been shown that Luke and the team from Out of Darts have already done. This little graph right here shows you every single piece of everything you would need to know about the velocity points of what every barrel and spring combination on the Worker Harrier will do. And yes, I can clarify, this thing still hits ridiculously hard. And yet at the same time, with that bearing piece installed that guides along the barrel and reduces your priming weight, it is incredibly easy to prime. Normally, I would never even look at a piece like this, but with the Harrier, not only does it work, it's actually really functional if you have this thing in kind of a sniper setup with a bipod and all that, because having a bipod up here, yeah, you're just asking to crack your knuckle open. So with the Harrier, you can actually configure this thing into a comparable sniper setup with the potential power and accuracy to back up that sniper status. Now we gotta talk about Worker's own bearing scar thing, B-card thing they have, because this is not very good, unfortunately. I really want it to be good, and it might just be this one, but problem number one is it wouldn't fit on any of the barrels. None of them. You technically could put it on there, but you won't be getting it back off without a vise, or potentially breaking everything. This has a lot of bearings on it. 4 sets as opposed to like the Turbine Scars 3, and I'm also having a lot of consistency issues with it. It doesn't seem to be very accurate. I don't know what FPS this is tuned for, though. It might only be for under 200, it might be for 250. It might not be able to carry the absolute maximum that the Harrier can put out. Sometimes it works great, most of the time it doesn't. So for right now, my test of the Worker Scar is inconclusive. Probably stay away until other people can corroborate that. But I can safely say without a shadow of a doubt that you are gonna be hard pressed to find anything in this price range, even looking higher than the Worker Harrier, that will give you as much as what it can. I mean, right out of the box, there's a ton of configuration options. If you already have parts and pieces all over the place or want to buy airsoft accessories like different buffer tube stocks, different sights and so forth, different rails, you could take off rails, you could add rails, of course, different priming grips, different mag choices. There's a lot of room for change just in this configuration, let alone what could come out in the future. But the stock blaster itself is of such high quality and is so nice to use that really I can't recommend anything above it right now. Not only can you make this thing hit ridiculously hard or ridiculously light and everything in between, but it does it being extremely efficient and extremely fun and nice to use. And that's on top of the fact that the Worker Harrier is also like way more efficient than most other blasters, because I can prime this thing, put my finger over the barrel, pull the trigger. It's got a 100% air seal with no tuning whatsoever. That is incredibly efficient. The one con that I have with this blaster, and this could be a relatively short-lived issue, is that most games run at about 130 to 150 FPS. It is very hard to get this blaster hitting under like 150. It really doesn't want to do it with any spring or barrel combination out of the box. I'm sure there will be parts and pieces in the future that will allow you to nerf your Worker Harrier to hit those FPS marks. And last but not least, the favorite thing about the Worker Harrier is it actually comes in the same colorways that most of Worker's other blasters they've been making recently have been in. So this is like a complete loadout set right here. Yes, it's a lot of money. It's a few $100s. So if you really wanted to, you could have not only a Worker loadout, an effective Worker loadout, but also one that all matches, which is dumb, but really cool. And of course, we can't forget it's got a little smiley face molded into it. I don't know why, but it does.